I used to think I knew what peace felt like. Awards on the shelf, calls returned in one ring, rooms that stood up when I walked in. I'd shake hands, smile for photos, go home tired in a good way, the kind of tired that says the work means something. I told myself quietly, you did it right. You climbed the mountain and set up camp at the top. Then one morning, my phone lit up like a fire alarm. A headline with my name in it, twisted into something ugly. I read it twice, three times, waiting for the part where it corrected itself. It didn't. The phone kept buzzing. My publicist texted, "Don't engage." My friend called and didn't leave a message. Another headline followed, and another. I told myself it would pass. People know me, they'll remember my work. Give this a day. Day one became day three. Interviews canceled without the courtesy of a reason. Invitations postponed. Folks who used to slap my back changed their route when they saw me coming. It wasn't loud. That hurt the most. No shouting, no debate, just distance. I tried to steady the ground under me. We drafted a statement, dignified, firm, clear, the lawyer said. We sent it out. It made a ripple, then sank. The talk shows picked the worst photo they could find, eyes half closed, mouth open, like I'd wandered into the frame by mistake. They laughed. I turned the TV off and walked circles through the house until my knee ached. Sleep went first, then appetite, then breath. I'd be halfway up the stairs and have to stop, palm on the rail, catching air like an old man. The doctor pressed cold metal to my chest, asked me about stress. I almost laughed. He gave me a printout with instructions I read and forgot on the same drive home. The pills rattled in their bottle like change I didn't earn. Calls from the old circle slowed. One friend did call, voice careful, like he was stepping around broken glass. Lay low, he said. Time will help. I wanted to ask, whose time? Mine feels like it's running out. We met with the attorneys again. They walked me through words like mitigation and exposure. They were good men doing a tough job, and I could feel their effort like heat from an oven. I signed papers, nodded at strategies, and left more tired than when I arrived. In the car, I closed my eyes. For a second, I pictured my first big break, the joy of it, the way the room looked when they clapped. It felt like I was visiting a house I no longer owned. At night, the house got loud in the worst way. Every pipe had a complaint. Every floorboard begged to be noticed. I lay there, body heavy, mind spinning, and I did the thing I hadn't done in a long time. I prayed. It wasn't formal, no perfect words, just, God, I need help, please. I waited. I listened like a man standing at a door, ear to the wood, hoping for footsteps. Nothing. I tried again the next night, and the next. I went through the old phrases I learned as a boy, the ones that used to come easy. They felt like I'd borrowed shoes from someone with smaller feet. I asked for wisdom, then for mercy, then for anything at all, a sign, a line, a quiet sense I wasn't alone. The ceiling stared back, plain and stubborn. The headlines got meaner, the jokes sharper. Even the compliments, when they came, sounded like eulogies. I walked into a coffee shop I've gone to for years. The barista looked down like she'd been taught to. We're out of your roast, she said to the counter. I said, any roast is fine. And she nodded to the machine as if it might answer me. I kept pushing. Statements, phone calls, a planned sit-down interview we thought would turn the tide. They canceled the morning of. Change of direction. I put the phone on the table and sat there a long time, hands open, feeling the old instinct to fix things burning through my chest with nowhere to go. The body keeps score. The cough hung around. The blood pressure numbers turned into a warning. I didn't tell anyone. Not really. I just started sitting down more on the edge of the bed to lace my shoes, on the hallway bench to check a text I already read, little surrenders I pretended not to see. One night it broke. Not loudly, not with plates or shouting. I stood in the kitchen with the light over the sink and said out loud, "Why now? Why me?" I tried to line up the facts like soldiers' work done, honestly. People treated fairly, a life lived with care. I couldn't make the math add up. I spoke again, softer. I did everything right. The refrigerator hummed. The house held its breath. I went back to prayer because I didn't know what else to do. Not a bargain, not a speech, just a man asking for a hand in the dark. I waited for the warmth I remembered from another time. I waited for the calm that settles you from the inside out. All I got was the clock ticking, steady and indifferent. Morning came, and with it the same grind, calls, emails, plans that fell apart. I showered, dressed, ironed the collar flat, and felt like I was putting on a uniform for a job no longer mine. I sat at the edge of the bed and let the quiet settle. There's a point where you stop arguing with your circumstances and just listen to them. That's where I was when I finally admitted the thought I had been circling all along. I misunderstood faith. I had treated it like a lever. Pull hard, watch the problem lift. Pray harder, things get better. But the lever wasn't moving, and my arms were shaking. I looked at the floor, then at my own hands, the same hands that had signed 1,000 autographs and held 1,000 scripts. I spoke into the empty room, no audience left to impress, no spin left to try. I thought faith meant things would get better if I prayed hard enough. I thought the storm would pass. It didn't. It just got quieter and colder. Weeks stacked up. The phone slowed, then went stubborn. The projects I thought were paused turned out to be gone. A manager I'd known for 20 years sent a short text, taking a different direction. My doctor adjusted my meds and suggested rest, like rest was something you could buy at the pharmacy. I woke up tired, went to bed wired, and somewhere in the middle I forgot what normal felt like. People said, "Hang in there." They said it the way you say "bless you" when someone sneezes, automatic, already moving on. I kept a brave face until I closed the door. Then I stood in the hallway and listened to the house breathe. One afternoon, I called a friend who never dodged my calls. He picked up on the third ring, voice soft, like he'd stepped out of a meeting he didn't want to leave. I went straight at it. "Tell me the truth," I said. "Why isn't he doing anything? I've prayed, I've waited nothing." He took a long breath. "Maybe he's doing something you can't see yet." I stared at the wall. "That sounds nice on a card." "That's all I've got," he said, "and I believe it." "Yeah," I said, "I used to." We hung up like men setting down heavy boxes, careful not to drop them. I looked at the shelf where I keep the old Bible. I didn't touch it. I didn't want to open a book and find a stranger on the other side. Sunday came. I didn't go anywhere. A neighbor texted, "Are you at service?" I typed, "Running late," then deleted it and put the phone face down. I told myself I needed space, but what I wanted was distance. Space is a room you might come back to. Distance is a road you take to make sure you can't hear the music anymore. The prayers stopped first, then the verses, then the quiet reminders I used to carry around like pocket change things to hold when the day got long. I replaced them with noise, podcasts, news, Anything where someone is always talking so you don't have to listen to your own house. People noticed. A producer I trust said, "You've got to keep your head up. God's got you." I met his eyes and said, if he wanted to help, he would have done it by now. He bit his lip and patted my arm like I was the one who needed consoling. I hated how small I sounded and couldn't stop sounding that way. Nights got longer. I walked the hall. I opened the fridge like there might be answers on the second shelf. The clock on the stove ticked loud enough to be rude. My chest felt tight. Not panic, exactly, more like someone had quietly lowered a ceiling and forgot to tell me. Around 2, I gave in and spoke into the room. If you're real, why aren't you fixing this? My voice surprised me. It had a crack in it I didn't know I owned. I waited because I'm stubborn, because I wanted the air to change, because I wanted warmth to move across the tile floor and find my feet. Nothing. Just the hum of a machine and the old house popping in the night. I tried again, louder. Answer me. Silence can be a bully when you're already down. It looks big, stands close, dares you to swing. I didn't swing. I sat in a chair and watched my hand shake. The next day, another friend said, "Brother, this is when you hold on." I smiled without teeth. Hold on to what? A line that isn't tied to anything? He said something kind. I don't remember what. I only remember the look pity trying not to look like pity. I avoided church the way you avoid a mirror when you don't want to see the new lines in your face. People reached out with verses. I left them on red. A woman from a ministry called to pray. I said I was in a meeting. I wasn't. I was sitting on the steps tying and untying the same shoelace because it was easier than admitting I didn't want anyone speaking God's name inside my house. The anger didn't show up in a roar. It built in small ways, like heat you don't notice until you're sweating. I snapped at the TV. I cursed at a cabinet door that wouldn't close right. When a reporter recycled an old story with a nastier angle, I said out loud, "Where are you?" and hit the table with my fist. It hurt. I did it again. Days blurred. Health numbers drifted in the wrong direction. I counted pills in the palm of my hand and made bargains with a ceiling that wouldn't bargain. I told myself I'd try again tomorrow. Tomorrow arrived empty and left the same way. Friends kept sending advice. Stay positive. Focus on what you can control. God's timing. I wanted to scream that timing is something people say when they're not the ones bleeding. Instead, I nodded and typed, "Appreciate you," and put the phone away like it was a wild animal. In the late hours, I heard the old phrases knock on the door of my mind. I didn't let them in. I stood on the other side and held the deadbolt with both hands, afraid that if I opened it, all I'd hear was the same quiet that had been following me from room to room. One night I walked the length of the living room and stopped by the lamp. The light was weak and a little yellow. It made the paint on the wall look tired. I felt the same. I sat down, no speeches left in me, just breathing and the taste of old coffee and whatever pride I hadn't already swallowed. I thought about every time I told someone, "Keep the faith," like it was a tool you kept in the drawer, ready to fix anything. I thought about how many times people said it to me these last weeks, and how the words slid off like water on wax paper. I tried to find even a spark of what I used to feel when I prayed. Nothing caught. Nothing even smoked. I folded my hands because that's what they remember doing. My throat felt tight. I aimed my voice at the corner of the room and whispered, "I used to talk to God. Now I just talk to the walls." It was a quiet afternoon, the kind where the air feels heavy and the house sounds bigger than it is. I'd made a habit of keeping the blinds halfway down and the ringers off. Easier that way. Less to answer, less to explain. I was counting the grooves in the table just to keep my mind still when someone knocked. My first thought was press. My second was a neighbor with curiosity dressed up as concern. I waited, hoping the knock would give up. It came again, gentle, patient. I opened the door just enough to be polite. He stood there, older than I remembered, coat too big for the weather, smile that didn't push. A pastor I'd known years back, weddings, funerals, a few charity nights. He lifted a hand like he might back away if I wanted him to. I heard you've been having a hard time. I just wanted to check in. No sermons, I promise. I could have said I was busy. I could have said anything. Instead, I stepped back and let him in. Habit, maybe, or manners I hadn't lost yet. We sat across from each other. The room had that museum quiet, like everything in it belonged to someone else. He looked around, not nosy, just taking in the stillness. You've been keeping to yourself? He asked, soft. People keep enough distance for both of us, I said, and realized how sharp it sounded. I slid a mug across the table, a way to end the visit before it started. He didn't drink. He folded his hands and waited. I don't like being waited out. It makes me feel 16. I cleared my throat. I asked him for help. I said, finally. He gave me silence. He nodded, and for a second I wanted him to argue so I could knock the argument down. He didn't. Sometimes silence is help, he said. You just don't see it yet. I felt it heat rising in my neck. Help? I leaned back, laughed once, because the other choice was something uglier. I lost everything. How is silence supposed to help? He didn't flinch. He didn't rush his answer either. The pause felt like a boundary I hadn't earned the right to cross. He reached into his coat, not for a track or a speech, just a book I recognized, even with the cover worn out. He set it on the table like you set down a photo you don't want to smudge. You remember the story, he said, of the 3 men who wouldn't bow? They got thrown into the fire because they wouldn't pretend. Before that, they said something that doesn't get enough airtime. He found the place with hands that knew the pages. Even if he does not, we will not bow. I stared at the grain in the wood. So faith means pretending you're not burning? He gave a small smile, the kind that says, I've asked this before. No, it means knowing who stands with you in the fire. I didn't have a comeback ready. The clock ticked. Somewhere a pipe clicked. My chest did that tight pull it does when something honest gets close and the body tries to block it. I'm not looking for poetry, I said. I needed a door to open. I needed one person to believe me when I said I was drowning. I needed, the words stuck together. I pressed my lips and let the rest die there. I know, he said, and I believed him. He wasn't selling me anything. He wasn't marking the box. He looked tired in the way people look when they've carried other people's weight for a long time. I didn't come to fix your headline or your health. I can't. I came to sit. I came to say, you aren't abandoned, even if your feelings filed the paperwork. That's neat, I said, and hated myself for how small it sounded. What am I supposed to do with silence? Sometimes you live through it, he said, not alone. We let the room breathe. He told me the rest of the story in simple words, how they were thrown in, how the fire didn't do what it was supposed to do, how there was a 4th figure in the flames. He didn't push the image. He let it sit until it settled or slid off. I couldn't tell which it was doing to me. He closed the book and stood. You don't have to figure it out tonight, he said. Just remember, he's still there, even when you don't feel him. He held out his hand like a question, not an order. I shook it. His grip was warm, steady. I didn't say thanks. The word felt too easy. He didn't seem to need it. He walked to the door and paused. If you get tired of the quiet, he said, you know where I am. When the door clicked behind him, the house went back to its old tricks, every sound too loud, I looked at the chair where he'd been. I waited for my usual rush of sarcasm, the one that kept me upright when pity came for me. It didn't show up. Something else did, smaller and harder to name. I sat down and tried his words on like a jacket I wasn't sure fit. Even if he does not, we will not bow. I'd always heard the miracle part. I'd never sat with the even if like that. It felt like standing on a different kind of ground, nothing to brag about, nothing to wave, just ground. My breathing slowed without me telling it to. I watched the thin light from the window land on the table and fade at the edges. It wasn't joy. It wasn't relief. It was the first quiet that didn't feel like punishment. He said, faith means knowing who stands with you in the fire. I don't know if I believe that, but maybe I want to. I couldn't sleep. The pastor's words wouldn't leave the room. That line kept circling like a song I didn't ask for. Even if he does not, we will not bow. I lay there staring at the ceiling, counting out breaths, trying to bully my body into quiet. It didn't work. My shoulders felt tight. My jaw ached from clenching at nothing. I sat up and clicked the lamp on. The light was thin and a little tired, pooling on the nightstand and bleeding out before it reached the corners. The chair he'd used was still pulled a touch off-center, like his presence left a dent. I almost moved it back, then didn't. I rubbed my hands over my face and let out a sound I wouldn't call a prayer and wouldn't call a curse. Even if he does not, I said it out loud to see if it sounded any different on the air than it did in my head. It didn't. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and sat there a while, feet flat, back curved, like I was waiting for a referee to start the round. I used to think faith meant control. Be decent, work hard, keep your side of the street clean. God, in return, keeps the wolves on the other side of the fence. Simple, fair. I built my life on that handshake. Now here I was, fence gone, ground shifting, the deal feeling like something I'd invented to calm myself, my chest pulled tight. Was that faith? I asked the empty room, or just pride in a good suit? A shape on the shelf caught my eye. An old Bible, the one my brother gave me when our hair was darker and our worries were smaller. Dust softened the color of the cover. I reached for it, then stopped midway, hand hovering like the book might bite. My fingers started to tremble. I didn't like that. I took hold anyway. The leather creaked. The pages stuck to each other in places they hadn't been opened in years. There was a smell paper, a little must, a hint of something warm I couldn't name. I turned careful so I wouldn't tear anything. My eyes hunted for what the pastor mentioned. Daniel, the furnace. I found it and let a palm settle on the page like I was steadying it or asking it to steady me. I read slowly, lips moving without sound. I knew the outline, of course. Everyone knows the outline. But lines I'd skipped past before started pressing back. They didn't get rescued before the fire. They went in. They refused to bow first, then the flames came, and God didn't stop the soldiers, didn't pull the plug on the heat. He met them where no one wants to stand. I set my thumb on a sentence and felt my throat tighten. Faith isn't about getting out of the fire, is it? I asked the book, the table, the lamp, the room itself, maybe. I waited. Nothing dramatic happened. No electricity, no sudden warmth. Just a small settling in my chest, like a knot loosening one notch. I closed my eyes and pictured it without dressing it up. 3 men breathing smoke, skin prickling, hearing crackle and roar, and yet somehow not breaking. Not because they were superhuman, because someone was with them. The picture wasn't pretty. It wasn't meant to be. It was sturdy. It held. I turned another page, then stopped. I didn't need more words. I needed space for the ones I already had to land. I closed the book and felt how light it was in my hands compared to the weight sitting on my rib cage. I traced the worn edge of the cover with my thumb until the shake in my fingers eased. The house had its same night noises, the distant hum, the occasional click in the walls, but they didn't sound like threats tonight. Just ordinary proofs that a building is alive in all the quiet ways. I leaned back against the headboard and let the lamp light fall across my knuckles. My breathing slowed without me forcing it. The ache behind my eyes softened. I didn't get answers, not one. I didn't suddenly know how to fix my name, my health, my future. I didn't even know what I believed from top to bottom. But the panic that had been riding my shoulders slipped off to somewhere else, and in its place was something less dramatic, more stubborn presence. It's the only word I have for it. Not loud, not showy, just here. I let my head tip to one side and spoke quietly, like I was careful not to scare a skittish animal. It's about trusting who's in there with you. Saying it felt like setting down a heavy bag I'd been pretending wasn't heavy. I didn't ask for anything after that. I didn't make a promise. I didn't negotiate. I just stayed. Time passed, I don't know how much. The curtain moved a little from the draft. The lamp hummed. My pulse slowed to a steady count I could live with. I put the Bible back on the shelf, not as a declaration, more like placing a tool where I could reach it again without searching. My fingers rested on the spine for a second longer than needed. I slid under the covers and reached to kill the light. My hand hovered over the switch, and I felt the old fear rise, the one that says darkness is a mouth that swallows you whole. It didn't feel like that tonight. Darkness felt like a room someone was already sitting in. Maybe faith isn't about rescue, I whispered to the quiet, testing the shape of the truth on my tongue. Maybe it's about presence. Then I turned the lamp off and let the night be the night. Morning came earlier than I expected. Not brighter, just earlier. I opened my eyes and didn't feel the weight jump on my chest right away. The room was the same. The faded curtains, the dent in the pillow, the lamp with the crooked shade. But the air felt steady. I swung my feet to the floor, stood up slow, and lifted the window. Cool air moved across my face. I closed my eyes and let it sit there. Maybe peace doesn't come from fixing everything. Maybe it starts here, I said to the quiet. No lightning, no choir, just the sound of a city that didn't know my name and didn't need to. I made coffee and pulled a notebook from the drawer. Not for a statement, not for a plan. I wrote 3 lines: breathing, sunlight, one friend who stayed. My pen hesitated, then kept going. A nurse who was kind when she didn't have to be. The way last night didn't crush me. The taste of coffee when it's still hot. My throat tightened. I wiped at my eyes with the heel of my hand and laughed once, embarrassed, even though nobody was watching. Maybe this pain is teaching me what comfort never could, I said, and heard how true it sounded. Around mid-morning, a friend from the old days knocked. He walked in with cautious eyes like a man stepping onto a frozen pond. How are you holding up, he asked, ready to brace for the usual storm. I stopped fighting everything I can't control, I said. Turns out there's peace in that. He sat back. You look different. Still me, I said, just less noisy. We talked about work, the mess, my health. For once, I didn't try to spin it. When he apologized for not calling more, I didn't rush to make him feel better. I just told him the truth. I missed you. He nodded, eyes glassy. We didn't hug. We just let the words do what they were supposed to do. After he left, I cleaned the kitchen, not a desperate scrub to outrun my thoughts, just regular soap and water and a towel that could have been whiter. I ate without checking headlines. I answered 2 messages and let 5 wait. The world didn't end. In the afternoon, a reporter reached out someone who'd written a sharp piece about me when the fall began. She asked for a follow-up. I said yes, against every instinct that wanted to protect my skin. She showed up with a notebook and a voice that tried to be neutral. After all that's happened, she said, how can you still believe? I held her gaze. No speech, just the truth I had, because I've seen who stays when everything else leaves. She didn't write right away. She let the sentence land. You mean friends, family? I mean him, I said, then added, and also the few who didn't run, but mostly him. Her eyes softened just a little. I didn't come to hurt you, she said. I know, I answered. And I'm not here to defend myself. I'm here to tell you I'm not angry anymore. She blinked, surprised. Not even at God? Especially not at God, I said. And the word surprised me too. I spent months shouting into a locked room. Turns out the door wasn't locked. I was just holding it shut. She exhaled, then changed the subject, then circled back like reporters do. But the sharp edges didn't cut. When she left, she shook my hand with both of hers and said, thank you for the time. I believed her. Late afternoon, I got a message from a young man someone had connected me with. He'd watched the stories, read the comments, and felt his own faith slipping. We met at a park. He kept tugging at his sleeve, staring at the ground like if he looked up too long, the sky might scold him. So, what did God do for you? He asked, voice small. I didn't give him a sermon. I didn't reach for perfect lines. I let the pause breathe, then said he stayed. He frowned, waiting for more. That's it? That's everything, I said. He didn't fix my name. He didn't fix my body. Not yet. But I'm not alone. And I'm learning that being held together can matter more than being lifted out. He nodded slowly. What do I do? Start small, I said. Say thank you for 3 things that don't require anybody else to change. Then say it again tomorrow. He tried to smile. That sounds too simple. Good, I said. Simple is how you walk when you're learning to walk again. We sat a while and didn't force the silence to earn its keep. When he left, he didn't look taller, but he did look less heavy. I'll take it. Evening pressed in. My body reminded me it still had limits. I took the pills, stretched, and let the ache be the ache. I wasn't performing courage. I was practicing it. I texted the pastor 2 words, thank you. He replied with a prayer emoji and nothing else. It made me laugh. Night came easy. I lit a small candle on the table. The flame held steady, then leaned when the wind nudged the window. I watched it bow and straighten, bow and straighten. My chest stayed calm. I'm not afraid of the fire anymore, I said to the room. I get it. I thought about punishment and how it tastes like shame. This didn't taste like that. It tasted like patience, like someone sanding a splinter out of you, annoying, careful, necessary. Maybe the fire wasn't punishment, I said, soft enough to belong to the moment. Maybe it was refining. The draft pushed again. The flame dipped and stood. So did I. I blew the candle out and let the faint smoke lift. The room didn't feel empty. It felt occupied by something I didn't have to measure to trust. I washed the mug, turned off the kitchen light, and stood by the window long enough to see 1 star through the street glow. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't make a promise. I put my hand on the sill and let the peace be small, honest, and mine. The call came just after breakfast, a voice I knew too well, trying to sound steady and not pulling it off. You should come, he said. It's bad. My hands went cold first, then my knees. I grabbed my jacket and keys like a man packing for a 2-minute trip. The hospital air hit me too clean, too bright. I found the room, saw the tubes, the pale skin, the chest rising under a white blanket like a small hill trying to remember its shape. I took his hand, warm but drifting. People looked at me with that look like I might have a special line to heaven. I didn't. I knew it, and for once I didn't pretend. I leaned close and whispered, "If he wants to heal, he will. And if not, I'll still thank him." The words didn't feel brave. They felt true in a way that didn't ask permission. Hours slid into hours. Machines kept time no one wanted. I prayed, but it wasn't a list, not a pitch, not a trade. Whatever happens, I trust you. I said it the way you say your own name when you're lost to remind yourself you still exist. The monitor beeped steady, and between beeps, I found things to thank him for. One breath, then the next. A nurse with good hands, a joke someone cracked at the nurse's station that made two strangers smile. We slept in chairs and called it rest. I stepped out for coffee and came back fast, afraid the room would change while I was gone. It changed anyway. The doctor spoke softly, as if volume could change outcome. Words like aggressive and non-responsive floated around and bumped into my ribs. I held his hand again. "I'm here," I said. "We're both hell." I don't know if he heard. I hope he did. One morning, the beeps stretched too far apart. The air in the room thickened. Nurses moved in that quick, gentle way that tells you the script is unwinding. A line turned flat. The doctor's mouth pressed into a line that didn't hold. Someone said the words nobody wants to hear and everybody knows are coming. Silence settled. Not the cruel kind, not the kind that haunted my house months ago. This one was clean. A nurse laid a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said. "He's not lost," I answered, voice rough but steady. "He's just gone ahead." I sat. I didn't bargain. I didn't accuse. The ache came like a wave and didn't knock me under. I let it move through. I kept his hand in mine until they asked for it, and when I finally stood, my legs worked. That felt like grace. Friends arrived with casseroles and questions. They watched my face like a weather app. One of them, eyes red, pulled me aside. "How can you still believe after this?" he asked, almost angry on my behalf. I looked at my hands. They were marked up from hospital sanitizer, a small cut near the thumb. Ordinary. Even if he does not, he's still God, I said. No preaching in it, no victory. Just the center of the thing I stood on so I wouldn't tip over. The funeral was small. Not everyone could look at their own finish line and stay. I stood near the back habit, maybe. People cried. I did too, in quiet pieces. The stories came. The time he stayed late to help clean up, the way he'd show up with soup without asking first. Love leaves evidence, and the room was full of it. I put a hand on the empty chair next to mine and let the wood take my palm. I didn't ask for a sign. I didn't ask for a redo. I said the only sentence that fit inside my chest: "Thank you for not leaving me, even when I didn't understand." My throat tightened on the last word. I let it. After the service, someone tried to explain suffering like a math problem, all equations and neat conclusions. I shook my head. "You don't have to fix it," I told him. "Just sit with me a minute." He did. That was better than answers. I went home to a house that used to feel like an enemy and now felt like 4 honest walls. I made tea I didn't finish. The evening slid into a softer kind of night. I stepped outside to the porch because the air had that clean bite it gets after a hard day. The cup cooled in my hands. A car went by. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked at nothing and felt better. I looked up. Stars were faint in the city haze, but they were there if you took time. I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt intact. That was new. The fear that had once told me loss had the last word wasn't speaking anymore. In its place was a quiet, I recognized presence again, sitting beside me like an old friend who doesn't need to fill the space. I walked through it once. I said to the night, to my own chest, to the God who had stayed. And I found I sit by the window these days. Same chair, same light, but everything feels different now. The noise in my head has quieted down. I can breathe again. You know, I used to think faith meant control. If I prayed hard enough, if I played by the rules, God would play along. And when he didn't, I thought something was broken either in me or in him. But it wasn't. It just took me a long time to understand. I used to think faith was when God did what I asked, I tell people. Now I know it's when I still believe even when he doesn't. I've replayed the years, the scandals, the sickness, the silence, the loss. At the time, it felt like punishment. Now, I see it differently. Every piece of it chipped away something I didn't need. The pride, the fear, the illusion that I could earn peace if I worked hard enough. The fire didn't destroy my faith, I say quietly. It revealed it. It's strange how loss can polish a person, strip away the noise, and what's left is something you can finally see clearly. I don't try to explain it anymore. I don't argue theology, don't quote verses to make it sound profound. I just tell the truth as it is. I don't have proofs, I tell them, just peace. And sometimes that's enough. Most of the time, it surprises people. They expect drama, some grand testimony about miracles and second chances. But the real miracle, for me, wasn't recovery. It was still being able to say thank you when nothing changed. I talk to people who are in their own fires now, divorce, grief, guilt, all of it. They ask the same thing I once did. Why me? Why now? And I tell them the same thing the old pastor told me. Don't run from the fire. Sometimes that's where you'll find him. Then I let the silence sit. You don't rush truth like that. You let it breathe. You let people feel the weight of it in their own bone. Faith isn't loud for me anymore. It's steady. It's quiet. It doesn't shout or demand. It just stays. At night, when I think of everything that's gone, I don't ache the way I used to. I miss people. I miss parts of my life. But I don't feel cheated. I just feel grateful. Because somewhere in all the breaking, I stopped needing answers to believe. Faith isn't about getting what you want, I whisper to the room. It's about knowing you're never alone, even when you don't get it. That's the truth I live by now, the kind that doesn't need to convince anyone. If my story reaches you, if something in it feels familiar, then maybe it's because you've been through your own fire too. Maybe you're still in it. All I can say is this: hold on. You're not forgotten. You're not invisible. You're being refined into something you can't see yet. If this story touched you, share it. Leave a comment. Tell someone what faith means to you. It's not a sermon. It's just one man's proof that peace can survive the flames. And sometimes it's in the quiet aftermath, after the smoke clears, that you finally realize he never left at all.